The goal of this video is talking about solving equations, and although you may not think that you have too many issues with solving equations, we really want to try to put all of the pieces of the little things like combining like terms, adding integers, and all that stuff, and how that fits into this video. So first, let's talk about the goal of solving equations. The goal is to isolate the variable. So get this into your notes. The goal of solving equations is to isolate the variable, to get that sort of, x equals. Get that variable by itself, or k equals. Right? Get that variable by itself. And how do we accomplish this goal? By using inverse operations. So again, get that into your notes. The goal is to isolate the variable using inverse operations. And what do I mean by operations? Well, here are some of the operations you're familiar with. You're familiar with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Those are the four basic operations, and I would like to add in maybe squaring and then taking the square root. So sort of 6 major pieces that we have at this point. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Our first equation here is x plus 2 equals 10. Now, let's remember the goal. The goal is to isolate the variable using inverse operations. So what I see right here is addition. The opposite, or the inverse operation, is subtraction, so I subtract 2. That's how I'm going to get x by itself. Now let's keep in mind that whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And the reason for this is that I had this initial expression here on the left, and it was equal, or the same as the expression on the right. If I change the expression on the left by some value, if I change the left side, I got to change the right side, the entire left side and the entire right side, by the same amount. So what happens? X drops down, 2 cancels out to become 0, and 10 minus 2 is 8. Goal accomplished. The variable is isolated. We solved our equation. Next version. The variable is on the left side, on the right side in this equation. Still, it's the same goal. The goal is to get k by itself. So what am I going to do? I look at the constant that is attached to k. It is attached via subtraction, so the opposite is to add 7. And I add 7. Notice that I wasn't looking at the value of k. I didn't choose subtraction because I see a plus. I choose addition because I see the minus. The sign is always in front of the number. Right? The sign of k is in front of it, it's positive. The sign of 12 is in front of it, it's negative. The sign of 7 is in front of it, it's negative. Opposite of negative is positive. So I add 7 on both sides. And what happens? The k drops down, and then here we are adding integers. This is why we have to be able to do it. A negative 12 and a positive 7 is a negative 5. Final answer, we're all set. Now let's try some more difficult stuff. What do we have in this example? In this example, I see that the variable a is right here. It's attached to 4 via division. So what is the inverse of division? You say multiplication. Yes. And what am I going to multiply? The very number that I want to go away. So 4 is the value that's attached by addition. The inverse is multiplication. I multiply by positive 4 on both sides. Now, we learned on how to deal with fractions in our last video, several videos ago. This cancels out to become 1, or a divided by 1, or just simply a. And a negative 5 times a negative 4 becomes a negative 5 times a positive 4 becomes a negative 20. And although my writing isn't the neatest there, we get the point. Onward and upward, we have our variable x, and x is attached to 15 via multiplication. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So what am I going to do on both sides? Divide. I'm going to divide by 15. Okay, well now on the left side, 45 divided by 15 is 3. So 450 divided by 15 is 30. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So 15 divided by 15 is 1. X, final answer, x equals negative 30. Now I've been a little slow to just go back and double check, but to substitute in your answer would be a great way to see if you are correct. Is 15 times negative 30 negative 450? It is. Negative 450 equals negative 450. Good. So this is our check. This is our final answer. Our next problem has a little bit more beef to it. First thing I see here is distribution, so we've talked enough about distribution. Let's just distribute that negative 6 carefully. Negative 6 times a negative 6 is a positive 36, and the negative 6 times the positive 4 is going to be a negative 24n equals 84. Now what? Now I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides. Right? My goal is to isolate that variable, but the first thing I'm going to do is strip away the stuff that's not attached to the variable. I subtract 36 from both sides, and as I clean this up from left to right, I always like to work from left to right as I clean things up. 36 minus 36 is 0. The negative 24n just drops right down, and 84 minus 36 is 48. Notice I took a moment to do the subtraction out by hand. Okay, now what are we going to do? We're going to divide on both sides. Why? Because negative 24 was attached by n via multiplication. So I'm going to divide by negative 24 on both sides. Negative 24 divided by negative 24 is a positive 1n. N is now isolated. A positive 48 divided by a negative 24 is a negative 2. And that is our final answer. Off on the right side down here, as you'll notice, I took the left side of the equation, I substituted in my n value right here, and then I used order of operations to evaluate step by step to make sure that is the left side actually equal to 84. It is, so we're good to go. I'm going to do a couple more of these really quickly, and then that's that. This next problem has distribution and combining like terms in it. So the first thing we're going to do is deal with that distribution. Everything else is just going to come right down. So the 86 comes right down, and the 1 comes right down. Now we have to distribute this negative 5 across these two terms. So negative 5 times positive 7 is negative 35, and a negative 5 times a positive 4 is a negative 20a. Now we've released the terms from inside of the parentheses. Now we have our like terms. So we have a 1 and a negative 35. No problem. Adding integers should be a piece of cake. That's going to be negative 34 minus 20a. Now let's keep moving on to our goal of, right, we've simplified the right side. Now let's get rid of this constant. So first we're going to use the inverse operation. I see subtraction. I'm going to add 34 to both sides. Clean it up from left to right. 120 equals, that goes down to 0, negative 20a. Negative 20 is attached to a by multiplication, so I'm going to divide on both sides. I divide by exactly what I see. Cleaning it up from left to right, negative divided, or positive divided by negative is a negative, and 120 divided by 20 is 6. Negative 20 over here divided by negative 20 is 1, positive a, and there's our final answer. And as you notice, on the end here, I've added in a little bit of a check, right? Substituting in the negative 6 and working my order of operations out. We see that 86 is equal to 86. So again, let's just review what happens. At the end of the day, what's important to keep in mind is the goal, right? The goal is to isolate that variable, whatever it is, x, k, m, g. Of course, our most popular version is x. And how do we do that? By using inverse operations and then all of the other skills that we've been practicing very carefully, one step at a time, always remembering to work from left to right. Good luck.